What's up, fantasy managers? Welcome back to another episode of the First Pitch podcast brought to you by PitcherList.com. My name is Jake Crumpler, and I'll be taking over the majority of the episodes of this podcast for the year. You'll see me Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. My friend Trevor Huth will be taking over Friday, Saturday, and is that right? Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Yeah, that's right. He'll be taking over for the whole weekend. You can follow me on Twitter at Jake Crumpler. You can find all of my work at crumplerbaseball.com. Let's dive into everything baseball related from Sunday, March 16th. I'll be going over all of the news and transactions and injuries from the entire weekend. So let's start off with the notable injuries that will really impact your fantasy teams heading into the first official week of fantasy baseball. We'll start off with catcher Tyler Stevenson, who is expected to open the season on the 10-day IL. It's pretty much confirmed at this point. He's got a low-grade oblique strain. It looks like he could be out for just a couple of weeks, but the thing with oblique strains is they're always really tricky. So there's a shot that he's out for a month plus. We'll see. Right now, it looks like Jose Trevino is expected to be the catcher for the Reds moving forward. It's a pretty good ballpark, so maybe he can produce some offense there as the catcher in Great American Ballpark. Parker Meadows, an outfielder for the Tigers, is expected to not be ready for opening day. He has a right arm nerve issue. This is pretty unfortunate considering he was expected to have a big breakout season. I know I drafted him in at least one of my leagues, and he was expected to lead off for the Tigers. So now with him out, likely out for at least 10 days, Wenceel Perez is expected to take over in center field. He is also projected to bat leadoff, so there is a chance that if he has not been picked up in any of your leagues, Wenceel Perez is a good shot at producing some runs at the top of the Tigers order. Plenty of opportunity to grab him in shallow leagues and in deep leagues. He might have already been swooped up, but if you're in slow drafts right now that are still ongoing, like I am, you could probably still draft Wenceel Perez right now, who could be batting leadoff for the Tigers on opening day. Next, we have John Gray, starting pitcher for the Rangers. He's dealing with a fractured right wrist and is expected to miss roughly 6 weeks. Could be longer than that. I've seen the timelines just saying extended, so it could be a lot longer than 6 weeks. Is pretty rough, especially on the pitching arm for John Gray. And with Cody Bradford also experiencing elbow soreness for the Rangers, both Kumar Rocker and Jack Leiter look like locks for the opening day rotation for the Rangers. So that's pretty dope. Both of those guys have super high potential, super high ceilings with big fastballs. And you know, both guys, they were teammates at Vanderbilt. So that's super dope to see them both in the same rotation, and they can both be their opening day. Tons of potential for big strikeouts there, though they're likely to experience struggles as rookie starting pitchers. Next, we have starting pitcher Matt Waldron, the knuckleballer, who's dealing with a mild oblique strain. He's unlikely to be ready for opening day as well. Lots of oblique strains early on, or I guess late in spring, but early on in the season, as it's really a whole body thing, and baseball's a whole body sport. And if your whole body's not prepared for the regular season for pitching at full strength like this, you're likely to experience a lot of oblique strains. And so we see a lot of those at this time of the year and into April. Stephen Kolek, though, is expected to have the inside shot at the fifth starter job for the Padres. So that's pretty cool, as Stephen Kolek is a former relief pitcher and is expected to shift to the rotation. So there's potential for, you know, unforeseen circumstances there with Kolek. Kolek taking a big step forward there as he transitions into a brand new role. Next, we have another unfortunate news, which sort of ties in with Parker Meadows for me, as I've been drafting Jesus Sanchez of the Marlins in a lot of my leagues as well. And he is dealing with an oblique strain and will begin the season on the IL for the Marlins. That's very unfortunate. We saw some power and speed with Jesus Sanchez last year, so I thought we had some potential going into this year to have a big breakout season. Unfortunately, that's put on hold for the time being, but I think Jesus Sanchez will be able to bounce back and have a big season. But for now, we probably won't see him until May. It seems not to be a low-level oblique strain. It seems to be pretty severe, so we may be without Jesus Sanchez for at least a couple of weeks. For now, it looks like Griffin Conine and Dane Myers will be splitting time in right field for Jesus Sanchez and the Marlins. So there is an opportunity there. Conine, the son of former starting pitcher Jeff Conine, so that's pretty cool as well. I think Dane Myers has some speed, so potential there. The Marlins don't have a great lineup, though, so don't be expecting a tons of runs in RBI. Talking about other Myers, we have starting pitcher Tobias Myers of the Brewers. He's also dealing with an oblique strain, and though he is undergoing further testing, he is expected to miss some time. That is coming straight from the manager's mouth. So Tobias Myers coming off a season where he had some pretty fortunate luck last season, pitching as a Toby, but with a confirmed rotation role. I think there was some people that were excited to get him late in their drafts, and by some people I mean me. And so that's Tobias Myers. He will be likely headed to the IL with an oblique strain, which means Tyler Alexander could be the fifth starter for the Brewers. He's been a swingman for a long time with the Rays and the Tigers. Tyler Alexander, a southpaw for the Brewers, could have the fifth starter role on opening day. Next, some very unfortunate news. Obviously, this is all unfortunate. We're just talking about injuries, but outfielder Mookie Betts will miss the entirety of the Tokyo series. It's only a couple of games, but he's dealing with an illness. Unfortunately, maybe he ate some bad fish or whatever. I feel like that's probably the one place where you're not going to get bad fish, bad sushi is in Japan. But unfortunately, Mookie Betts dealing with some sort of illness will miss those 2 games. And that really sucks, honestly, because he is on the Dodgers. The Dodgers and Cubs players were the ones that were have had that extra value in drafts because they were playing these 2 games early on. And Mookie Betts, being one of the best players in baseball, getting those 2 extra games early on really made you feel like you were getting some extra value if Mookie Betts didn't really live up to his full potential. Now he's not even playing in those games, so it's sort of very unfortunate there. Luckily, it is just an illness, so by the time real opening day comes around in a week, we won't be really scared about Mookie Betts missing any time. He should be in the lineup. Next, expected, also unfortunate news, third baseman Royce Lewis had to leave the game with a hamstring strain and is expected to begin the season on the IL. I think there was probably a short list of players you could have expected to have an injury this early on, and it's really unfortunate to have those ideas about players in general, but Royce Lewis is one of those guys who has been injury prone throughout his career. It was just a matter of time before he spent some time on the IL this year. Unfortunately, it's very, very early on in the season, and that's actually before the season begins. So Royce Lewis, I think they'll probably go easy on him. I don't expect them to push him back really fast because of his extensive injury history. They have a lot of infielders as well to back him up, with Jose Miranda and Edouard Julien likely to fill in at third base. They can also shift things around. They have plenty of flexibility in the infield, though. Royce Lewis is one of their highest ceiling hitters, so they'll be begging for him to be back as soon as possible, though. I have a hunch that it won't be before May. Hopefully that is not the case. Next, we have third baseman Yoan Moncada, who is dealing with a sore thumb and could begin the season on the IL. It didn't seem super serious at the beginning, but now it's likely that Yoan Moncada is going to miss opening day, which could mean we see more Tim Anderson. He could go to second base, seeing Luis Rengifo shift to the hot corner, though we could also see JD Davis play at third base, with Rengifo staying at the keystone position. They have a lot of somewhat flexibility there with a lot of NRIs, non-roster invitees, and veterans there, but it's unlikely to really be determined early on. I don't think they'll go into opening day saying Tim Anderson is our opening day second baseman and will be throughout the year. I think it's probably going to be an ongoing process, see whether or not JD Davis or Tim Anderson or maybe some younger player like Christian Moore or whatever can come up and figure things out at the keystone. But I think for now, if this thumb injury isn't too bad for Moncada, I think they'll be hoping that he's back early on and they won't be looking for a permanent replacement at the hot corner. But that's Yoan Moncada dealing with a sore thumb. And our last injury is Dalton Varsho, who is still recovering from September shoulder surgery. He's expected to begin the season on the IL. I think we all expected that going into the offseason. I at least was under that impression during the draft season, when I had Varsho actually pretty high on my ranks because the projection systems I was using suggested that he was a guy you should be drafting, that he was worth a couple of dollars even in very deep leagues. I didn't end up getting him in more than one league. And right now I feel pretty good about that because he's going to begin the season on the IL, but it shouldn't be for too long. I think it should be a minimum stay or at least just a few weeks for Dalton Varsho. For now, in center field, I think the Blue Jays will go with Joey Loperfido and Miles Straw. Straw is superior defensively. Loperfido, obviously, better offensively. They could platoon, which doesn't really make sense to me. Straw isn't really a great hitter against righties or lefties, so I don't think it really matters who you're putting him against there. Maybe he has a better chance of doing well if you put him in there against lefties, but I feel like with a guy like Straw, you sort of want to substitute him in late in games to get that defense, or have him just play all the time to really maximize his potential because he's really just there to be a good defender, while Joey Loperfido needs to get everyday at-bats if he wants to live up to his potential. So I think a platoon there doesn't make much sense. I feel like the Blue Jays will settle on Loperfido or Straw as the opening day center fielder until Varsho is fully recovered from that shoulder surgery. So that will do it for the injuries. We'll now move over to the news. Not much fantasy relevant stuff, but we'll get moving through this as starting pitcher Clay Holmes will be the opening day starter for the Mets. Not something you would have expected anybody to say at any point in the past, right? It's former relief pitcher, former closer, especially of the Yankees. So now seeing him on the Mets, being a starter too, and then also being the number one starter basically for the team. That'll happen when you have injuries to big starters like Sean Manaea and Frankie Montas. But the rest of the rotation aren't really opening day starter type guys either. Not to say anything about their pitching, but Kodai Senga's coming off a shortened season. I think they're going to take it easy on him early on. I know they're thinking about doing a 6-man rotation or at least giving people more time to rest. David Peterson, Tyler McGill, and Griffin Canning are also in a similar boat altogether where they're young guys who haven't really proven themselves to be opening day starters. And not that Clay Holmes has been able to do that either. Never started a game, but he has proven himself more so in the major leagues than those three. So I think it makes sense for him being the opening day starter. That will really be interesting to see whether or not this experiment goes well. They seem pretty confident about that. On the other side in New York, Carlos Rodon will be the opening day starter for the Yankees with Max Fried starting game 2. So they're really looking good. I know Clark Schmidt is dealing with some shoulder injuries. So it's really important right now that these top 2 guys in the rotation take on a big workload, especially with Garrett Cole going under the knife with Tommy John surgery. So this rotation is really not looking good. They're probably thanking whoever told them to sign Max Fried because that has really sort of saved their whole season, and the season hasn't even begun. Elsewhere in the AL East, the Rays exercised Yandy Diaz's $12 million 2026 club option, so that's for next season, and they did that so that they could then add on a vesting option for the following season for 2027. So that option will vest based on how he performs in 2026, but Yandy Diaz seems to be in Tampa Bay for at least a couple more years. So that's pretty cool. I think I've always been a big fan of Yandy Diaz. And yes, it's mostly because of his big biceps. Next, we have starting pitcher Spencer Strider, who is scheduled to start in a spring training game technically today, Monday, which means he could return in mid-April. I think early reports were suggesting like a mid-May to early May type timeline. But early reports right now suggest that we could be getting Strider back a lot earlier than we initially expected, which means the people that had the confidence to go grab him in drafts were very smart, because you're going to be getting Spencer Strider just after a few weeks into the season. And that's number one starter potential there with Spencer Strider. So very cool. We're excited to see how this first start goes. I don't think it really matters if he has success. I think if we see the velocity, we see, same sort of break on the secondary pitches and same sort of control with them. And then, just seeing them get up and get down and get through it unscathed, I think that would be great. And, give us some confidence that Spencer Strider is going to be actually a legit contributor to your fantasy teams this year. In other pitching news, the Twins opening day rotation is now set, which is unfortunate for the dudes who drafted Sebi Matthews and David Festa. I was one of the guys who was big on David Festa. I drafted him in a few of my leagues. Unfortunately, he is not one of the guys who made the rotation. Looks like Chris Paddock and Simeon Woods Richardson are the last 2 members of the rotation. They'll be joined by Pablo Lopez, Joe Ryan, and Bailey Ober. So the Twins rotation is completely set. I really don't have a lot of confidence in Paddock. I think Woods Richardson has enough prospect pedigree and performs, well enough in a real life sense to maintain his rotation spot. But in fantasy, he's no more than a Toby. I think Paddock has the ability to flame out, though he did have a very good, healthy offseason, which I think has allowed him to take on this role. So, barring no injuries and stuff, we may be sort of at a lost season with David Festa and Sebi Matthews, though I wouldn't give up just yet. Our last bit of news is pretty fun. Joey Gallo is not going to be an outfielder anymore. He will shift to being a pitcher, which is very weird. I think that will happen when you can't make the White Sox roster. That'll do it. But Joey Gallo looks like he's going to be pitching, so that'll be interesting to see if a team will bring him on to sort of figure that out, or if he's going to have to go to independent ball or sort of figure it out on his own. That'll be interesting to see if we get a pitcher version of Joey Gallo. I really wonder how he's going to fit like his 3 true outcomes persona into a pitcher. It should be a lot of fun. Now we'll look at some of the notable performances from spring training yesterday. We had Cam Smith had a big game. He hit a home run going 2 for 4 with a pair of runs and a pair of RBI. He's been going off this spring, but batting 423. This was his third home run. He's got a 1362 OPS. And with the performance, he could force his way onto the roster, especially with the positional flexibility he's been displaying so far. He came up as a third baseman and a second baseman. He was just drafted in 2024 in the first round and was part of the Astros return for Kyle Tucker from the Cubs. But he's been showing the ability to play outfield. He played right field yesterday. So with all that flexibility and performance on the field, I feel like Cam Smith has got a really good shot at making this roster. However, he's not on the 40-man roster, so they'd have to shift things around. So that's really working against Cam Smith, though that is really fun. I think Cam Smith is a fun guy, especially because he's really unknown. We didn't get to see a lot of him in the minors. So getting to see what he can do in the majors will be a lot of fun because it's like getting to know somebody for the first time. The other batter I'd like to make note of is James Wood, who took on the Rays and went 2 for 3 with a pair of runs, a home run, a double, and a pair of RBI. He's up to 4 homers in spring, batting 379 with a 1386 OPS. Really dope. He's shooting up draft boards. That's James Wood. I'm pretty sure I saw a main event on NFBC where James Wood was drafted in the second round or something. Absolutely ridiculous. But this is the type of talent he displayed in the minor leagues, and this is why he was always on top of the top prospect list and stuff, because James Wood is a really good hitter. I really don't think his defense is going to matter that much when he's hitting this good. And that Dylan Cruz, James Wood combination is looking absolutely deadly in Washington, in the nation's capital. Now we'll look at a pair of starters before closing things out. Hayden Birdsong had a very good start against the A's yesterday, tossing 5 shutout innings, allowing just 2 hits while striking out 8. He walked nobody. There was no StatCast in that game, so I can't tell you what his whiffs and his IVB was looking like. But he is making a case for a rotation spot right now. Roster Resources has him penciled in as the 5th starter, and there's a pretty good shot at him making it. I think he's fighting with Landon Rupp right now, and Birdsong showed enough last year and in the minors and so far this spring to make a case to be in the rotation. In spring, in 12 innings, he's allowed just 1 earned run while striking out 18 batters. Pretty dope from Hayden Birdsong. I feel like he's got the 5th starter locked in, and he's got some potential with the ability to strike out a lot of batters. The other pitcher I'd like to make note of is Jack Leiter, who had an easy matchup against the White Sox, and he didn't really excel. He tossed 4 innings, allowing 4 hits, 2 earned runs, 3 walks, while striking out 4. He induced 11 whiffs with 22% CSW. So the swing and miss was there, though he wasn't able to throw a lot of strikes. The fastball looked legit, though. It had 4 whiffs and was sitting at 18 inches of induced vertical break on average. So that's a legit fastball. I'm mostly concerned about his weapons against left-handed hitters. The changeup isn't really a go-to off-speed pitch for him. His slider is more of his bread and butter. And the curveball seems to be a pitch that he turns to against lefties, but they're just not getting the swings and misses that he needs, forcing him to rely on that fastball a lot more. And he doesn't really have a secondary strike pitch against lefties either, because that sinker he only uses versus righties. So I'm somewhat concerned with Jack Leiter's ability to get left-handers out. So that's something he'll have to work on and sort of prove throughout the season. But he at least showed the ability to get a lot of whiffs with that fastball. So definitely making his case to make the rotation. So let's look forward to tomorrow. We got 15 more spring games on tap. I think my matchup of the day is pretty easy. It's Paul Skeens versus Joe Ryan. At this point in spring training, there's not a lot of ace versus ace. You mostly see that during the regular season. It's a lot easier to pick out a matchup of the day during the regular season. In spring, though, I got pretty lucky. This one was pretty apparent. Paul Skeens on the mound versus pretty much anybody who's much watched baseball. So definitely go check out the Pirates versus the Twins there. And also, if you stay up late enough, you'll not only catch me live again for the next episode of the First Pitch podcast, but you'll also catch the Dodgers versus the Cubs. It's supposed to be 3 a.m. Pacific time. So that's like, I think that's right. 6 a.m. in East Coast. So really that'll be the whole next day for me. That'll still be tomorrow night. So definitely tune back into the First Pitch podcast tomorrow night and stay tuned for the first real games of the baseball season late tomorrow night on the West Coast, and on the East Coast early morning. But that'll do it for this episode of the First Pitch podcast. Make sure to head on over to pitcherlist.com to check out all of our other great articles and features we have on the site. Perfect for draft season if you still have your draft going. Join PL Pro to gain access to the Discord, to interact with Pitcher List staff like me and other members of the community, as well as to utilize the in-season tools to help you win your leagues in your drafts. That'll wrap up this edition of the podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at Jake Crumpler, Tune in tomorrow and every day for a new installment of the podcast, and make sure to enjoy the day, as we are blessed with another day of baseball.